Hi everyone, my name is Memo, this is my channel Houseplanty Goodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion, which you might be able to see behind me and in front of me. It's tropical houseplants. Now, today I want to talk about a very special variegated philodendron, and it is, and I'll bring it up a bit closer so you might be able to see, I always make the mistake of watering my plants before I film them, so they always end up dripping on me. But this plant that you might be able to see in front of me is the philodendron white princess, and you can see some of that glorious white chunky variegation on the leaves there that I was showing a moment ago. Now let's talk a bit about variegation generally, and it applies to this plant as well. So you might be able to see on this leaf that I'll use this as an example because it is a good leaf to use as an example. Anything that might not come up well, I'll see in editing, and I'll see if I can put a picture so you can see it a bit clearer on the side there. But variegation is always within the stem. It's in the genetics of the plant. There's very little you can do to encourage larger amounts of variegation on your plant. To get brighter variegation on what's already existing on the leaf, that's to do with light. If you put it in slightly brighter light, you'll get brighter variegation. So another video that I did was talking about Polaroid variegation. It might be a more green or minty or yellowy color if it's not getting enough light. If you give it a bit more light without scorching the leaves or burning the leaves, so that's the fine balance that you need to figure out, you will get brighter variegation. So if it's light green or minty color when you're not giving it enough light, it might be cream or white variegation when you're giving it more light. It kind of works in that way. Now, there is something that needs to be of note about how the variegation occurs on the leaves. So if you think about it, it's 3 layers of cells. So you've got the top layer, you've got the bottom layer, and you've got the middle layer, and they're all sandwiched together like that. Now, what you'll get is on this leaf here, you can see a slightly muted minty variegation there. All that means is if I show you the back of the leaf, that section there, which is where the variegation is on the front of the leaf, doesn't exist on the back of the leaf. So that means that just the top layer is variegated. On this section of variegation here, and you hopefully might be seeing that there's a slightly brighter section right where my finger is, and there's a slightly more mint variegation there. You might be able to see, if I bring up the back of that section of variegation, is that 2 layers are variegated and maybe the bottom one is not. So you get a brighter minty color leaning more towards cream. However, when you get all 3 of the layers that are fully variegated, you will get variegation that looks like this. And it's more of the sectoral, especially if it's large areas. It's more of the sectoral and it's fully white. And in that situation, that entire section of that leaf cannot photosynthesize. The rest of the leaf and the rest of the plant is picking up the slack essentially for that area of the leaf that doesn't have chloroplasts, if I'm not mistaken, to produce the chlorophyll which sustains the leaf through the light. Now, which means that generally, even though we like those pure white sectoral variegations on a plant, sometimes you'll see a plant that will have more of this speckled and more of this kind of mint variegation that's coming through, even if you put it in brighter light. And that is because it's less damaging to the plant. So I'll give you a question. Would you prefer to get a plant that is variegated that fully reverts back to green? Or would you be happy if that was the case and it was an either or situation to have the slightly more muted variegation, because then at least you've got some level of variegation and the plant is almost 100% happy because there's enough cells that it can photosynthesize from some of the other layers of the leaf rather than the large sectoral sections. Obviously, you also know, hopefully by this point, if you've got enough variegated plants in your care, you might have already figured this out. The fully variegated on all 3 levels parts of leaves, the ones that are bright, white and sectoral, if you don't get the lighting just right, the watering just right, and the humidity just right, and even then, you'll get crisping and browning, because essentially, if you think about it, what the plant is then doing is that section needs to go because it's not helping, and if anything, it's hindering because it's using up energy when it can't produce its own energy. Essentially, trying to think of a non-gory example to give it this, but in a situation where you've got a section, say you're in a team, and this is going to be a bit brutal, but it's what the plant is doing to survive. Say you're in a team, and there is one person in the team that is doing nothing, and everybody else is carrying the weight. Very quickly, what will happen is that team will oust that team member off the team because they're sick and tired of carrying the weight of the work that's needed because that one individual will not be doing the work. Hopefully that kind of makes a bit of sense. Probably the best example I could have given, but you know. The other thing to kind of bear in mind about this plant, and I'll show you if I bring it in a bit closer, is you might be able to see some of these aerial roots. This plant will quite readily produce aerial roots. You've seen that as always, I've got it on my trusty kind of janky support sticks rather than moss poles because I ain't got no time for that. However, I will be making a moss pole soon. I'll do a video on it from a method of creating a moss pole that I've seen from a very dear friend on Instagram. And I want to try her method. I know she also found it from somebody else as well, but I'll give her credit because that's where I saw it essentially. And that is for a self-watering moss pole. When I make that, hopefully I'll do a video as well and you can see how I did it. With the other thing as well to note about this specific plant, and again, I'll bring it in a bit closer and hopefully it's going to come out. You can see there's pink and there's red within that cataphyll. And we've talked about this before. A cataphyll is where the leaf will emerge from on philodendron specifically. But that harkens back to the original DNA and genetics of this plant. If I'm not mistaken, if I am mistaken, I'll correct myself somewhere on the screen. This is linked to the philodendron erubescens, if I'm not mistaken. And that is also the same philodendron that is what is producing the pink princess. And you saw the pink and some of that red stem on there as well. You do occasionally get some white princesses that will push out a pink variegated leaf, much like the pink princess. And for a very long period of time, I think people were seeing this, and even when there was a few white princesses that came out in the UK and EU at around the same time, people weren't selling that for any more. I think now they've named it something in order to sell it for more. So those plants that have got that throwback a bit more predominant might sell for a bit more. I don't know if that is something that's stable or if that's something that every single white princess could eventually produce a fully pink leaf because of the plant that was originally what was creating it. Purely because, if I'm not mistaken, and if you've ever cut a pink princess, you'll see that the sap that comes out is red and it almost looks like it's bleeding. I'm pretty sure I have not cut this plant yet to propagate or do anything yet. I generally like to let my plants get really, really big and then maybe cut down in order to relieve some of the height and the pressure, and then I'll propagate it. So when I do, I'll let you know what the sap is from this plant, but I have a very sneaky suspicion if it's not fully red, it will be a pinkish color as well. So it kind of harkens back to that erubescence, which is potentially, if I'm not mistaken, what is one of the parent plants for both this and the pink princess. And that's where the pink and the reds are coming from. I think that's everything. Obviously, care of some terracotta pot as all my other philodendrons, and it's in a chunky, light, airy, arrowed soil mix. If you want to know how I do the mix, there's a video on my channel. If you want to see what ingredients I use, there's a link down below in the description. Do check it out. But yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to say about this plant for now. If you've got any questions, comments, do drop them down below. I'd love to have that conversation with you. Hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly, truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.